On with us now is Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Preibus, just elected to a second term. Mr. Chairman, great to have you with us today.
Hey, John. Nice to be back on the show.
Always a pleasure. We love having you on because you are definitely one of those that gives it to us straight here. What was your biggest takeaway from your winter meeting just concluded in Charlotte, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, there's so many things that people want to talk about. I'm sure you guys have done a lot of that.
Yes.
I would just say that if there's one common belief that everyone can agree to, it's that we've got to quit running 9-month campaigns, and that while I think Romney did a pretty good job running a 9-month campaign, I think everyone pretty much agrees that Barack Obama did a pretty good job running a 4-year campaign. And while we were playing footsie with each other, debating 23 times, the other side was spending about $150 million on technology and data and voter contacts and going door to door. And I think that the day of permanent politics is upon us, and I think it's about time that not just the party, but our friends and everyone in between need to accept it and live in it and get ready for it, which means year-round campaigning and year-round money raising and competition that has to be taken in the long view and not the short view. And I think that's just one of the major takeaways from Charlotte, but I think it's a pretty big one.
The Republican Party apparatus as it stands needs to be in 24/7 campaign mode, much like the Obama machine was since the day he was inaugurated back in 2009, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And, I think that we're going to have to be the ones that carry the mantle to move forward with that. We don't have, obviously, an incumbent president. And so, but nevertheless, instead of whining about it and complaining about it, I think that it's our opportunity to take that mantle and to build out a 4-year and a 2-year operation, come up with what that plan is going to look like, and then go sell it to the grassroots and the donors. And I got to tell you, from traveling around the country, meeting with the donors, meeting with the grassroots that are not dispirited but disappointed, they know that this is true, that we have to compete on a year-round basis. And so I think if the plan is intelligent and reasonable and it's detailed and we sell it, our donors are going to help us put it on the table, and that's what we need to do.
Mr. Chairman, on Sunday night, 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats in the U.S. Senate crafted a proposed immigration reform compromise that will lend itself towards enabling the 12 million immigrants in this country here illegally to find a pathway to permanence. Part of that is closing the border and other things. Now, we've all been over the numbers, that there's a shifting demographic in the United States, and we, as Republicans, have to do something to deal with that. Do you think getting right now bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform is one of the things that the Republican Party as an entity has to embrace in order to broaden its demographic appeal, sir?
Boy, that's a good question. No, I don't think that. I don't think that that's the most necessary thing in order to broaden our base. I think the most necessary thing for us to broaden our base is to be, is to be disciplined, and is to be who we are, which is that I think to grant people their dignity and the respect that they deserve, and not say things like self-deportation and those sorts of things, which, by the way, is not where our party's at. I do think that the issues regarding the changing demographics are real for our party, but I don't think that the percentages are something that's new for our party either. And if that makes, let me just explain what I'm saying. Bob Dole got about 21% of the Hispanic vote.
Right.
Bush 41 got about 24% of the Hispanic vote. Bush 43, who did very well, got about 40%. McCain got 30%, and Romney got 27%. my point is this: our issues regarding our appeal in that demographic really isn't new. But the problem is, of course, that the demographic shifts and the growth are becoming problematic given the electoral map that we face every 4 years.
Right.
I think immigration reform is really important in making sure that Hispanic voters, or at least a sizable percentage of them, understand that we care. We understand the issues that are facing them and their family. And I think that there's opportunity for us in regard to work visas and immigration status reform in regard to skilled workers. And I also think, though, that when you poll Hispanics on this issue, they totally agree that the first and foremost issue in this regard in any package has to be securing the borders. The reason we have the problem we have is that laws have not been enforced and the border has not been secured. And if we don't decide to enforce laws and secure the border, we can come up with a great pathway for citizenship package, but it'll be facing us again in 10 years from now. We'll be talking about the same thing on your show and what we're going to do and what the status is going to be and how it's going to get done. So I don't think, and I do believe that people like Marco and others are very committed to this. I don't think any package flies unless we have a foolproof method of securing our border and at least enforcing the laws that are in the books.
Right. Otherwise, we can solve the problem now, but it's just going to reverberate back around. We're going to be faced with the same thing in another decade. So I think that makes sense.
And that shouldn't be, this is, I think it's totally ridiculous that this issue of securing the borders has now been reduced to a talking point that you hear everyone mentioning and everyone talks about it. I can't figure out why it's such a difficult thing for us to at least accept before we start talking about new status and pathway, that we at least accept the fact that we have to secure our borders first and that we put something in motion from a legal standpoint to make sure that it happens. I mean, this is not too much to ask for, and I think it makes total logical sense in any conversation.
If I could draw an analogy, it's like the argument for raising taxes without any corresponding spending cuts to go with it. You never really solve the problem.
That's another thing. I mean, it's exactly a great example because no amount of revenue is going to solve the spending problem and the growth in government that we're facing. And it's the same thing with immigration. No amount of reform is going to solve the fact that until you secure the borders and enforce your laws, you're never really going to solve the problem.
Mr. Chairman, as it goes to both minority outreach and debunking myths about what the Republican Party stands for, what are your specific plans to attract more into the big tent?
Well, I think you all know that we're doing this Growth and Opportunity Project, and we're coming up with a 2- and 4-year plan in that regard. And this is why we're coming up with a 2-year and 4-year plan. I'm not interested in hiring 4 or 5 people to spin the media as far as what we're doing and what we're not doing and reaching out and also welcoming in minority groups into our party. I'm looking to put together a comprehensive 2-year plan that may include hundreds of people in places like Kissimmee and Hialeah, Florida, and Denver and Las Vegas, doing things that we can measure. And that means voter registration, community events, swearing-in ceremonies, having goals and metrics that we put on paper that both volunteers and paid help are going to be expected to meet, and then measuring the progress that we're making in those places that are going to actually move the dial on Election Day, as opposed to just coming up with some ideas that'll make a few good stories. And so that's really the long-term vision for what we're doing, and we're going to be probably releasing that plan in the next I would say no more than 2 months.
Excellent. I have two short follow-ups for you, Mr. Chairman. After the cost of the National Convention, as well as not fielding a winner at the top of the ticket, which we know always does help donations, have you retired the RNC debt, and how financially healthy is the party?
Yeah, no, we've retired the debt completely. So we have no debt, which I think we might be the only committee in Washington that doesn't have a debt right now. And then, I think we're about plus $5 million to the good right now. I don't know how we're going to be the last few days. We usually get a pretty good run on donations during the last few days of the month. So we're doing great as a committee and financially.
And before I hand you back to John, is the RNC planning any changes to the primary process, such as regionally clustering some state primaries or other remedies to help the process?
Well, yeah, that's always been a big topic of discussion for the party. I would imagine we're going to look at that again over the next couple of years, is that to look at regional primaries, look at the debate calendar as well, and figure out a way to tie the debate calendar to the nomination for president, which would help us control the debates, pick the moderators, and do a better job of making sure that we don't end up with 22 debates.
We certainly did have a lot of entertaining debates. There's no question about it. Chairman, the meetings in Charlotte, our committee man in Virginia, Morton Blackwell, he was very upset over some of the rules changes that he believed the Romney lawyer faction foisted on the party during the convention in Tampa. He's introduced ways to roll those back. Our question is, are you personally going to back those new rules changes at the upcoming RNC meeting in April?
Well, I'm definitely willing to fix what needs fixing, and there's going to be probably quite a few amendment suggestions to the rules, and we have the opportunity for the first time that we know of to be able to fix the rules in between conventions. So I've already talked to Morton many times, and people know that I want to fix whatever it is that people want to get going on. And so as far as Rule 16 and delegate selection rules, I've got no problem with clearing all of that stuff up. So I'm not holding on to anything there. I would just say that my actions are going to speak louder than words. And so for the first time ever, we're having a Rules Committee meeting, an official meeting of the RNC in April, which for those of you that don't follow this closely, we never have Rules Committee meetings this early, and we never have an official RNC meeting in April either. It's usually our next meeting would be in the summer. But I've moved everything up just for the specific purpose of not just conducting RNC business, but conducting Rules Committee business. And part of that is because Morton had requested it, and I thought that it was a good idea to get the Rules Committee together and look at this issue.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate your candor on that. If we can get to pure politics in the couple more minutes we have, Mr. Chairman, looking ahead to the balance of power in the United States Senate in 2014. Tom Harkin, veteran senator from Iowa, just announced he's going to retire. That is a potential pickup for the GOP. Do you see a pathway for Republicans to gain a majority in the Senate in 2014?
Yeah, if you look at the map, and I don't have the map in front of me, but I will tell you what you'll see is that you have kind of a challenge up in Maine just to make sure that you keep Susan Collins where she's at. But I think she's very strong up there. But other than that, if you look at that map and you see the Senate seats that are up, there are almost no places that you wouldn't look at and say, that's a place that we can win. And of all of the seats that are up, obviously you're mentioning one of them in Iowa that I think looks really good. I think it's very possible, and that's certainly our goal, is to win back the Senate. I think it's probably too early to tell exactly which states are going to give us our absolute best opportunities, but if you look at that map, you're going to see a real pathway to getting to the majority in the Senate.
Okay, we want to thank you for your time, RNC Chairman Reince Preibus. For our listeners, Mr. Chairman, if they want more information on the RNC, where do they go?
GOP.com. Also, my Twitter handle, I think, is pretty good for getting information out of the GOP, and it's at Reince. And I know it's a bizarre first name, but if you can spell that, you can find it. It's at Reince, Reince.
You want to repeat that just to make sure you got it right, sir?
Reince.
Terrific.
What happens when your parents are Greek and German, you get a name like mine.
At Reince, that's right. At Reince.
I follow him on Twitter, and you should too. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much, especially in light of your heavy travel schedule today. We really appreciate you taking time out.
Okay, thanks, guys.